the cosmos, now divided among the Olympians, turned its gaze to a new creation, humanity. Forged from clay and stardust, mortals were fragile, fleeting, and achingly ambitious. This is the age where gods and humans collided, a dance of defiance and devotion, gifts and curses. The gods are watching, and humanity's first steps will echo through eternity. The Titanomachy's dust had settled, and the Olympians revelled in their hard-won dominion. Yet in the shadowed valleys where mortals scavenged for roots and whispered prayers to forgotten gods, a spark of rebellion smouldered. Prometheus, the Titan of forethought, stood at the edge of Olympus, his gaze fixed on the frail, clay-born creatures below. They shivered in Nyx's eternal dark, their teeth chattering, their hands raw from striking flint. Zeus had forbidden the gift of fire, decreeing that mortals remain beasts, ignorant, fearful, and subservient. Prometheus, whose name meant foresight, knew the cost of defiance. He had counseled the Titans to surrender, foreseeing their doom, and now walked freely among Olympians who distrusted his lineage. Yet his heart ached for humanity. They were his creation, sculpted from river clay and animated with stolen stardust. In their eyes, he saw not just survival, but hunger, for warmth, for knowledge, for something beyond the dirt and the dark. He climbed to Olympus under the guise of night, his footsteps silent as fog. Hestia's hearth burned at the palace's heart, its flames tended by nymphs who drowsed over their task. The fire was not mere heat, but logos, divine reason, the same essence that pulsed in Zeus's thunderbolts and Hephaestus's forges. Prometheus hollowed a fennel stalk, its fibrous core resistant to burning, and stole a single ember. The flame curled into the stalk like a serpent into a den, its light hidden but alive. The descent to earth was fraught. Zeus's eagles circled the peaks, their cries sharp with suspicion. Nyx draped her wings over Prometheus, her ancient alliance with the Titans outweighing her loyalty to Olympus. In a grove where mortals huddled beneath bear pelts, he pressed the fennel stalk into their hands. The ember spilled out, igniting a blaze that roared into the night. Fire transformed the world. Hearth flames licked the walls of mud huts, driving back predators and winter's bite. Smiths forged bronze plows that split the stubborn earth, and potters shaped clay into vessels that mirrored the stars. Words, once grunts and gestures, became stories etched in soot on cave walls. Mortals raised their faces to the heavens and dared to name the constellations. Zeus's wrath was swift. He summoned Hephaestus, the smith god, whose limp echoed through the hall like a funeral drum. Chains of adamant, unbreakable and cold as betrayal, were forged. Prometheus was dragged to Mount Caucasus, his back lashed to the stone by Hephaestus's trembling hands. The smith's eyes glistened. "I have no choice," they said. Prometheus laughed, the sound echoing across the cliffs. Each dawn, an eagle descended, its talons carving into Prometheus's liver. Each night the organ regrew, the cycle unending. The Titan's screams shook the earth, but his resolve did not waver. To the mortals below, his agony became a beacon, a reminder that defiance had a price, but so did silence. Zeus, unsatisfied, turned his ire to humanity. If fire had made them bold, he would break them with a subtler poison. He commanded Hephaestus to mold a woman from clay, her form perfected to deceive. Athena clothed her in a gown spun from sunlight. Aphrodite gifted her a smile that could unravel resolve, and Hermes taught her lies sweetened with half-truths. They named her Pandora, the all-gifted, and sent her to Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother, with a sealed jar clutched to her chest. Prometheus had warned Epimetheus, "Accept no gifts from Olympus." But the brother whose name meant afterthought gazed into Pandora's eyes and forgot. The moment she crossed his threshold, her fingers pried at the jar's lid. A hiss slithered out, followed by a swarm of plagues. Grief with its hollow eyes, disease rotting the air, hunger gnawing its own bones. They spiraled into the world, infesting hearts and harvests. Pandora slammed the lid shut, trapping one last spirit inside. Elpis, hope, its wings fluttering weakly against the dark. Mortals, now cursed with suffering, turned their stolen fire into weapons. They forged swords instead of plows, raised villages instead of building them. Yet hope, though caged, endured. It flickered in the songs of bards, in the embers of hearths, in the hands of a child cupping a wounded bird. Prometheus, chained to his mountain, watched it all. His laughter, though ragged, never ceased. Zeus's eagles could devour his liver, but they could not consume his truth. Fire was more than a tool. It was a mirror, reflecting humanity's duality, the capacity to create and destroy, to love and ruin. The gods, for all their might, could not unsee their own reflection. The age of mortals had begun, their brief lives a flicker against the divine eternal, yet in their hands, fire became both altar and pyre. Zeus ruled Olympus, but doubt gnawed at his throne. Somewhere, in a cave on Crete, a shepherd drew a bull on the wall, its horns curling like flames, a testament to a spark that even gods could not extinguish. The air on Olympus hung heavy with divine spite. Zeus, his throne still vibrating from Prometheus's laughter, demanded a punishment to eclipse even the Titans' torment. "Let humanity choke on their stolen fire," he declared. Hephaestus, the smith god, was summoned, his forge stoked with malice. From river clay and the grit of stars he moulded a woman. Her limbs were smoothed to perfection, her face a masterpiece of symmetry, but her eyes held a hollow glint, a vacancy only gods could mistake for innocence. Athena draped her in a gown spun from sunlight, the fabric shimmering with the cold logic of strategy. Aphrodite breathed into her lips a sigh that could unravel empires, her allure a weapon disguised as a gift. Hermes, ever the trickster, coiled lies into her tongue, sweetening them with half-truths until her voice dripped like honeyed venom. They named her Pandora, all gifted, a jest only Olympus could craft. In her hands they placed a jar, sealed with divine wax, its contents a secret even the Furies dared not whisper. Pandora descended to earth, her steps light as dandelion seeds, the jar cradled like a child. She found Prometheus in a valley where mortals had begun to build walls against the dark. His brother's warnings echoed in his skull, "Accept no gifts from Olympus." But Pandora's presence unmoored him. Her laughter was the ripple of a spring thaw, her eyes twin pools reflecting a world unmarred by suffering. Prometheus, whose name meant afterthought, lived true to his nature. He welcomed her, his doubts dissolving like salt in rain. For a time the jar sat untouched, a silent sentinel in their hearth-lit home. But curiosity, that most mortal of traits, gnawed at Pandora. The gods had woven it into her marrow, a flaw disguised as fascination. By night she dreamed of the jar's contents, whispers of wings, the skitter of claws, a melody that was neither song nor scream. By day her fingers traced its lid, the wax seal throbbing like a second heartbeat. One twilight, as Prometheus laboured in the fields, she succumbed. The seal cracked with a sound like a rib snapping, and the jar erupted. A hiss slithered out first, then a swarm of horrors. Grief, its hollow eyes leaking ash. Disease, its skin mottled with rot. Hunger, a skeletal wraith gnawing its own bones. War, twin blades rusted with ancient blood. They spiraled into the world, infesting the air, the soil, the dreams of children. Pandora stumbled back, her hands clapping the lid shut. But too late. Only one spirit remained trapped inside, OLYMPUS, hope, its wings beating a frantic rhythm against the dark. The world unraveled. Blight blackened wheat in the fields. Mothers cradled feverish infants, their lullabies choked by coughs. Neighbors raised spears over stolen grain, their faces twisted into masks even Nyx would fear. Yet amid the ruin, something flickered. A farmer, his crops dust, sowed seed salvaged from the ashes. A healer ground herbs by a sickbed's glow, her hands steady despite the odds. A child, orphaned and hungry, shared a crust of bread with a stray dog. Hope, though caged, seeped through the jar's cracks. It did not cure or conquer. It lingered, a stubborn ember in the marrow of the damned. Mortals clawed through despair not because they believed in victory, but because hope, in its cruel divinity, refused to let them cease. Zeus watched, satisfied. His vengeance was elegant, a paradox wrapped in clay. Humanity, gifted fire to aspire, cursed with suffering to remember their place. But on the slopes of Mount Caucasus, Prometheus laughed anew. The gods had underestimated their creations, to suffer yet persist, to know death yet build. This was the true theft, greater than any flame. Pandora, shunned as the bringer of ruin, wandered the edges of villages, her once radiant gown frayed, her steps trailed by whispers of witch, harbinger, curse. Yet in her arms she cradled the jar, its weight a reminder of what festered within. One night, by a river's edge, she met a blind bard strumming a lyre. "Sing of me," she pleaded, her voice raw. The bard tilted his head, his milky eyes seeing beyond flesh. "I will sing of the jar," he said, "but not of you, of them." His song spread, a ballad not of Pandora's sin but of humanity's defiance. How they nursed hope in calloused hands, how they kindled it in hearths and lullabies. The jar, once a prison, became a symbol. Potters etched its shape into urns, weavers threaded it into tapestries. Even Prometheus, hunched and grey, found purpose in teaching mortals to read the stars, their myths now tinged with both fire and shadow. The age of innocence had ended, but in its ashes something tenacious took root. Hope, that double-edged blade, carved its mark into the soul of mortals. Far to the east, a village elder traced the jar's shape in the dirt, her grandchildren clustering close. "This is not a curse," she murmured. "It is a choice." Above them, Zeus's thunder rumbled, but the children slept soundly, their dreams veined with light. The gods moulded time into epochs, each a reflection of humanity's descent from divine grace. In the beginning, there was no death, no labor, no tears, only the golden age, a paradise spun from Cronus's reign. Mortals of this era were born of sunlight and river mist, their bodies ageless, their hearts untouched by want. Earth yielded fruit without plough or seed, rivers flowed with honeyed wine, and spring lingered eternal. When their time ended, they dissolved into benevolent spirits, whispering through oak groves and moonlit meadows. Zeus's ascendance shattered the idol. The Silver Age dawned, its people sluggish and spoiled. Coddled by their mothers for 100 years, they stumbled into adulthood with the arrogance of gods but the wisdom of children. They ignored the Olympians' altars, spurning sacrifices, and in their hubris, carved kingdoms from sacred soil. Zeus buried them beneath the earth, their souls fading into faint, restless ghosts. The seasons fractured, winters bite, summers scorch, a reminder that mortals now lived on borrowed time. The Bronze Age erupted in violence, its men were forged from ash trees, their limbs hard as iron, their hearts barren of mercy. They ate meat charred black, drank from skulls, and waged war for no cause but the roar of blood. Their armor gleamed like dying stars, their swords thirsty for kinsmen's throats. Cities rose and fell in the span of a breath, their walls splattered with the gore of neighbor slaying neighbor. No gods mourned when they wiped themselves out, their bodies sinking into mud, their names erased by their own hands. A strange twilight followed, the heroic age, an anomaly in the downward spiral. Zeus, in a fleeting whim, sired demigods, Heracles, Theseus, Perseus. Mortals and gods collided in tales of love and war, their deeds etched into the night sky. Thebes, Troy, and Ithaca became stages for glory and grief. Yet even heroes were doomed. Achilles fell to a heel's weakness. Odysseus wandered into myth, and Jason's golden fleece tarnished to rust. Their souls fled to Elysium, a gilded cage at the world's edge, where they feasted on hollow laurels and the echoes of past triumphs. Now the Iron Age grinds on, its people born of toil and deceit. Day and night are choked with labor, fields demanding sweat for meager harvests. Brothers plot over inheritance, wives poison husbands' cups, and strangers meet with blades, not bread. The gods are distant, their faces blurred, their names invoked in curses, not prayers. Only hope, that last ember in Pandora's jar, keeps mortals crawling forward. They build towers to scrape the heavens, dig graves to outlast the stars, and in their quieter moments, whisper of a golden age they never knew, a half-remembered dream of a world unbroken. Yet the cycle is unyielding. In Thessaly, farmers till soil layered with the bones of silver kings. Blacksmiths melt down bronze swords to forge iron plowshares, their edges duller, weaker. Poets sing of Heracles between tavern brawls, their ballads slurred but insistent, as if heroism could be drunk back into the world. The Furies, though seldom seen, still stalk the guilty, their serpent hair hissing that even in this age, divine justice lurks. Zeus, peering down from Olympus, feels the weight of his own design. The Iron Age's stench, smoke, iron and rot, rises to his throne. Mortals, though diminished, persist. They cling to Prometheus's flame, bending it to engines and empires, their ambition a mirror to the god's own ancient hungers. In the shadows, Gaia stirs, her roots coiling around the foundations of mortal cities. She knows what Olympus has forgotten. Every age carries the seed of its own undoing. The 5 ages are not linear but a spiral. Golden echoes in iron, heroic veins pulse in bronze. In Anatolia, archaeologists sift through layered earth, ash from bronze wars, silver coins from hubristic kings, iron nails from a crucifixion, each stratum a testament to humanity's fall and stubborn rise. The cycle continues. Somewhere a child digs in the dirt, her fingers brushing a shard of pottery etched with a forgotten god's face. She smiles, unaware that the next age is already stirring. Zeus, peering down from Olympus, saw the Iron Age's rot festering in mortal hearts. Cities reeked of betrayal, temples stood desecrated, and even the altars of his own name smoked with tainted offerings. Disgust curdled into wrath. He summoned the winds, the rains, and Poseidon's trident. Together, they would scour the earth clean. Deucalion, son of Prometheus, read the signs in the trembling flight of birds and the feverish glow of stars. His father, chained to Caucasus, whispered through nightmares, "Build an ark." With his wife Pyrrha, daughter of Epimetheus, he felled pines from Mount Othrys's slopes, their resins sealing the hull against the coming storm. They stockpiled figs, barley, and a single olive sapling, its roots wrapped in damp wool. Animals came in pairs, wolves with flattened ears, doves with silent wings, guided by instinct older than fear. The deluge began at dawn. Clouds swallowed the sun, and rain fell in sheets sharp enough to flay skin. Rivers burst their banks, devouring villages. Poseidon's trident split the earth, and tidal waves crushed coastal cities. Mortals clung to rooftops, then to treetops, then to nothing. Their screams dissolved into the roar of water. For 9 days the ark tossed like a leaf. Deucalion and Pyrrha huddled in its belly, their prayers drowned by thunder. On the 10th day, the clouds parted, revealing a world stripped bare. Mountains stood skeletal, valleys choked with mud. The ark ground to rest on Mount Parnassus, its keel carving a scar still visible today. The couple knelt on barren rock, offering damp barley and wilted olive sprigs to Thebes, titaness of divine law. Her voice echoed through the crags. "Cast the bones of your mother behind you." Pyrrha wept, fearing sacrilege, but Deucalion understood. The earth was their mother. Her bones were the stones. Blindfolded, they hurled rocks over their shoulders. Where Deucalion's stones struck, men rose, calloused and grim. Where Pyrrha's landed, women emerged, their hands already cradling imaginary children. The new race was harder, their eyes wary, their laughter rare. They built homes of stone, not wood, and kept fires low to avoid attracting the gods. Zeus, grudgingly impressed, let them live. But the lesson lingered. Humanity's resilience was a double-edged sword. The stench of burning flesh clung to the halls of Thebes the night Heracles was born. Zeus, in his ceaseless hunger for mortal dalliances, had sired the child on Alcmene, a queen of mortal blood. Hera, ever vengeful, sent 2 serpents to strangle the infant in his cradle. But the babe, still slick with the womb's warmth, gripped the creatures' throats and squeezed until their scales cracked like pottery. Their lifeless coils became his first trophies, a grim omen of the trials to come. Heracles grew into a colossus, his shoulders broad enough to bear the sky, his hands calloused from bending bronze. Yet his strength was a curse. Hera's wrath festered, and in a fit of madness she drove him to slaughter his wife, Megara, and their sons. When the haze lifted, Heracles stood knee-deep in their blood, his roars of grief shaking the foundations of Thebes. To atone, he sought the oracle of Delphi, her chamber reeking of laurel smoke and volcanic gas. She decreed 12 labors, a suicide mission draped in divine irony. First, the Nemean lion. Its golden hide repelled arrows and blades, its breath reeking of carrion. Heracles cornered it in a cave, the walls narrowing like a tomb. Unarmed, he grappled the beast, his muscles screaming as he wrenched its jaws apart. The pelt became his armor, its stench a reminder of mortality's fragility. Next, the Lernaean hydra. a serpent with 9 regenerating heads, its venom seeping into the marshes. Heracles severed each head, but 2 sprouted for everyone lost. His nephew Iolaus, wielding a torch, cauterized the stumps. The Hydra's death throes poisoned the land, yet Heracles harvested its venom to tip his arrows, a weapon that would one day wound gods. The labor that broke him was not a beast, but a king's mockery. Clean the Augean stables, heaped with decades of dung in a single day. Heracles diverted 2 rivers, their currents scouring the filth, but King Augeas reneged on his reward. The hero's rage left the kingdom in flames, a Pyrrhic victory that earned no laurels. In the underworld he faced Cerberus, Hades' 3-headed hound, its jaws dripping with the saliva of the damned. Heracles descended past the Styx's wailing shades, his club and lion pelt useless here. With raw strength he pinned the beast, its whines echoing through Tartarus. Hades, impressed, allowed the hound's temporary release, a concession that cost Heracles a sliver of his soul. The final labor: steal the golden apples of the Hesperides guarded by the dragon Ladon. Atlas, the Titan condemned to hold the heavens, offered a trade. Heracles would shoulder the sky while Atlas retrieved the fruit. But when Atlas refused to resume his burden, Heracles feigned agreement, then tricked him into taking back the weight. The apples, once plucked, lost their luster, a metaphor even the gods could not ignore. Zeus, swayed by his son's suffering, granted Heracles immortality. His mortal shell burned away on Mount Oeta's pyre, his essence ascending to Olympus. Yet among the gods, he remained an outsider. Hera's glare followed him, and his laughter, once booming, turned hollow. The stars claimed him, his constellation a reminder that heroism is a cage as much as a crown. The night Eurydice died, the stars dimmed as if mourning. A viper, coiled in the grass where she danced at their wedding, struck her ankle. Her laughter turned to a gasp, her body collapsing like a wilted flower. Orpheus, the greatest bard to walk the earth, cradled her as her skin cooled to marble. His lyre, which had once charmed rivers to reverse their flow and stones to weep, fell silent. For days he wandered, his songs replaced by a hollow wind in his chest. Then resolve hardened his grief. He would go where no living soul had ventured, to the underworld, and sing death itself to its knees. The descent began at Taenarum, a cave where the earth gaped like an open wound. Shadows thickened as he climbed down, his lyre faintly glowing. The river Styx loomed, its waters black and choked with the whispers of the dead. Charon, the ferryman, lowered his oar. "No living flesh crosses these waters," he rasped. Orpheus plucked a single note, its vibration rippling across the Styx. Charon's skeletal jaw slackened. He offered his hand, tears of ichor streaking his hollow cheeks. In the fields of asphodel, shades drifted like smoke, their faces blank with oblivion. Orpheus played a melody of sunlit meadows and first kisses. The dead stirred, memories flickering in their hollow eyes. Even Tantalus paused his eternal thirst. At Hades' throne, Persephone gripped her husband's arm. The god of the dead sat rigid, his helm of shadows obscuring his face. Orpheus sang of Eurydice, her laughter like spring rain, her hands that shaped clay into birds that almost flew. He sang of their wedding day, of the viper's betrayal, of nights now choked with silence. Persephone, whose own heart knew the ache of seasons lost, wept pomegranate tears. Hades' voice, when it came, was the grind of tombstones. "Take her, but if you look back before sunlight touches her, she remains mine." The ascent was agony. Eurydice's footsteps echoed behind him, faint as moth wings. The tunnel steepened, the air warming with the promise of dawn. Doubt, that mortal poison, slithered into Orpheus's mind. Was she there? Had Hades lied? At the threshold, sunlight kissed his brow. He turned. Eurydice stood inches away, her hand outstretched. Her smile, radiant as their wedding day, dissolved into a wail as the underworld reclaimed her. Her final whisper haunted the cave long after Orpheus crawled back to the living world. He became a spectre. His lyre, once a conduit of joy, now played dirges that made wolves howl and crops wither. He spurned the gods, his songs accusing Olympus of cruelty. Dionysus's Maenads, frenzied and wine-drunk, found him by the river Hebrus. They tore him apart, his limbs scattered like broken cords. His head, still singing, floated downstream until the muses buried it on Lesbos. His lyre ascended as the constellation Lyra, its stars a reminder that even gods could not silence love's echo. Dionysus, born twice, first from his mortal mother Semele's ashes, then from Zeus's thigh, was a paradox. A god of ecstasy and terror, vines and blood, he carried the stench of mortality even on Olympus. His cult spread like wildfire, intoxicating villages with wine and dance. But Thebes, his mother's city, refused him. King Pentheus, Semele's nephew, barred Dionysian rites, calling them madness. "These Maenads are harlots, not priestesses," he declared, his throne room echoing with disdain. Dionysus, disguised as a mortal acolyte, stood before him, his voice honeyed and dangerous. "Worship me, cousin. The alternative is unwise." Pentheus, rigid with Puritan fury, ordered the stranger jailed. Dionysus smiled as vines shattered his chains and ivy cracked the palace walls. Thebes' women, Pentheus's mother Agave, her sisters Ino and Autono, fled to Mount Titheraon, their minds unraveling under the god's curse. Clad in fawn skins, they danced with serpents coiled in their hair, their throats raw with hymns. They tore bulls apart with bare hands, their fingers slick with gore, believing them sacrifices to the god. Pentheus, disguised in women's robes, crept to spy on the rituals. Dionysus guided him, his whispers stoking the king's voyeuristic dread. The Maenads, sensing mortal intrusion, descended like furies. Agave, her eyes wild with divine frenzy, mistook her son for a lion. She seized his head, her sisters gripping his limbs, and tore him apart. When clarity returned, Agave cradled Pentheus's severed head, her screams echoing through a kingdom now shrouded in vines and shame. Dionysus, his vengeance complete, vanished, leaving Thebes to rot under the weight of its own hubris. The age of gods and mortals ended not with thunder, but a whisper. Prometheus's fire, Pandora's hope, and Heracles' labours all became threads in a tapestry frayed by time. Archaeologists would later unearth Mycenaean tablets invoking Diwo and Poseidao, proving gods once bore different names. In Thera's ash, frescoes of bull leapers hinted at Dionysian rites older than Olympus. Mortals, though flawed, outlasted the Golden Age's ghosts. Their myths, born of clay and stardust, endure as mirrors, not of gods, but of humanity's relentless, flickering light.